I'll get right into it. So the first one is, can you guys give us a bit of a backstory on the band? You guys have been at it for a long time, but I still think there's not a great deal of information about you online. So you've written an enigma. Just give us like sort of the framework of the band starting out on that.
Sure. So I met Scott in kindergarten. We were in the same kindergarten class together. And my first experience with him outside of school, I went to a friend's house who lived on his street. And Scott came over. I was like, oh, Scott's in our class too. And next thing I know, we're in the backyard and Scott's doing pro wrestling moves on this kid. Like he had like a beach ball, just knocked him out like on the ground. And I remember this kid's mom got outside. He's like, Scott, you need to go home right now. I was like, whoa, Scott's crazy. And then Scott and I became friends in middle school. We started playing music together. Brandon was 1 year older than us. He played in Admiral Angry, and like we had such a cool scene of heavy music where we were from. Like I kid you not, I say this completely sincerely, we had the best slam dancers in the world, which is like that's such a weird like
not a good thing.
Such a weird merit to have, but I have never seen the kind of slam dancing we would see in Moore Park. And so people were really, really into this kind of breakdown culture. And then we would watch Admiral play, and it was like almost the antithesis of that, but still obviously extremely heavy music. And so like, I think I looked up to Admiral so much, even though I didn't know or understand their music so much yet.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning that the incarnation of Admiral he's speaking of at the time was much different than the Admiral that put out Buster. It was the scene we grew up in. I think like the first introduction to like the sort of like counterculture of heavy music, like the more like the hardcore bands, and then eventually like the more extreme metal bands. The impetus of it here was a very militant, like straight edge scene. And like Jackson said, it was like the kind of like beat down heavy music where people like to slam dance. And it was kind of at the beginning of that being kind of hand in hand with that type of music. And then on the other end of the spectrum, just in spite of that scene, Admiral existed. And I'm speaking for Brandon. Brandon could probably say it best because he was actually in the fucking band. But it was like, so that was, I believe, like what led to this sort of more open, forward-thinking look to heavy music, because people like Brandon and then Daniel, who is a guitar player for Admiral, started like drip feeding, you know, Meshuggah, Colta Luna, Will Haven, and I was like, oh, like there is heavy music that isn't like tied to this scene where like we have to worry about getting like beat up because we can't like name 3 songs from a band and we're posers, or because we smoked a cigarette.
Yeah.
So I guess we never really answered your question though. We we give a lot of background like of our youth and heavy music, but I think the short version is we played in a band in high school that was sort of like the precursor to what Black Sheep Wall would be. And once that band broke up, we still got together to practice with the same lineup except the different guitar player. And, the difference was we just were like, what would happen if we were to take our guitar and just go? I don't think we even planned for drop G's, and that's what we ended up on. I think we just tuned and we like hit a note and we're like, oh, it sounded good. Let's tune from there. And then that's kind of the start of Black Sheep Wall, right?
Absolutely. And it was, I mean, we never saw ourselves as like, quote unquote, a real band in any way. Like we just played in bands in high school for fun, and we would play at these little rec centers, and it was like our way of getting together after school and doing something creative. And, you know, like our most forward thinking was like, oh, we're going to get to play this show in a month, and hopefully there'll be some people there, and some people will love it and some people hate it. But like, it was never about like having any kind of legacy or even recording an album. It was just like taking it a day at a time. And then we ended up making something that we thought was cool. So we kind of stuck with it.
Right, cool. So correct me if I'm wrong, was Jeff the vocalist for I'm Got Songs? Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was. So how did it come about with basically Making I'm God songs?
With Jeff?
Yeah. Well, yeah, with Jeff. Yeah.
In the previous band that the three of us played in, actually played a lot of shows with a band that Jeff was singing for called I Got Shot in the Face. And we just kind of made friends with him at shows and just hanging out and whatnot. And I believe Scott was the one who reached out to him after I Got Shot in the Face had broken up, and we had started this new project for him to potentially come in and do vocals.
He was also the singer of The Faceless at the time for a little bit. Before like The Faceless actually blew up and put out any albums, they did like a 2-song demo, which he was actually the vocalist on. And I don't know, we were like pretty kindred spirits early on. We met and we just connected. He's not like 10 years older than me or anything, but he's quite a bit older than me. So, you know, I looked up to him as a young kid because he was, you know, playing in The Faceless. I Got Shot in the Face, for all intents and purposes at the time, were like pretty forward thinking and a cool band. And we were actually talking about doing a project on the side while he was still on I Got Shot in the Face, and I was in the band with Jackson and Brandon called Coyote, which never came to fruition. And I think that led sort of to what his involvement in Black Sheep Wall.
Right, cool. Right, so I'm God Songs is 12 years old in October, which is crazy when you think about it.
Yeah,
what made you want to go back to it and release it on vinyl the first time?
The opportunity.
Yeah, someone asked us, we were like, yes.
Yeah, I wish we had like a really good reason. I think we've always wanted to, and we've talked about it here and there different times, but it just never quite came together, and this time it did. So yeah, we're super excited.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, cool. Right. So from what information we've been able to gather over the years, I'm God Songs was made under innocent, almost naive circumstances. So looking back on it now, what's your overall impressions on the album?
I mean, that's sort of true just through the sheer virtue of us we were, you know, between 17 and 18 years old. And I mean, Jeff was a bit older, but I mean, I was still in high school when we recorded the album. I mean, I look back on it now and I think it's an album that, not one, I'm proud of, but two, it's obvious to me that it was bred like out of like contempt. I mean, Moore Park, the city we grew up in, is like super boring, nothing else to do. And I think, you know, I used to hang my hat on that. I felt like that album was really like it personified like despair a lot. But when I listen to it now, 12 years removed, I feel like I can hear my youth in it and being like bored and smoking pot and playing video games. And I can hear that better now than I could when I was much closer to it at its creation.
Right. So, similar point for me is like, I was the person in the band who was just kind of like, oh, Jackson can play drums, so he can play on this music. But like, I didn't listen to very much good music at all in high school. Like a lot of my interests were in like pop punk, and then I was playing in a church band, and like I was just all over the place. I was just trying to like get good at drums. And so like I looked up to Scott and Brandon and Jeff that they like had good taste in music, which was something like I didn't quite have yet. And I think it's weird, like understanding music that I made 12 years ago. It's like I understand it now better than when I made it. And in truth, there's parts for me that when I listen to it, it's not a feeling of embarrassment, but it's like, man, I can't believe I made that choice. Like one, for instance, is so much of the double kick, like I totally overplay that on that album. And I think that's kind of become part of the charm, you know, but like, it's interesting because I do feel like I would handle it much more intentionally today if we were to write that album today. But at the same time, I do think there's something to the youth. There's something so free flowing about it of like, let's just do it, that does come across on the album that kind of lends it that charm.
Yeah. Well, that kind of goes into the next question.
I think I have a much.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, go.
No,
Yeah,
you're
but
right,
what are you
no,
gonna say?
No, I think my answer is kind of much more simple in the sense of like any of the projects that I've been a part of and whatnot is just always to create music that I want to listen to and that I want to hear. And especially if I'm not hearing it out in the world, if we can do something that I can reflect on and actually jam, as stupid as it sounds, by myself in my car, I'm totally for that. And that's kind of what that album personifies. Any of the albums really that I've kind of put together with these guys and with other guys.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point.
What kind of influences did you have in mind when you were making the album?
It was a very different place and time. So I know, speaking for myself, a lot of the influences that I had at that time really, while I can go back and listen to them now and like appreciate it for what it was, probably don't apply to what I would consider my taste anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was a lot of Meshuggah at the time. Cult of Luna. If I remember correctly, even bands like the Acacia Strain were pretty influential at the time. Will Haven was another big one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I mean, those were like the real big ones for me at the time. I mean, I've always like loved bands like Converge, but back at that time, like Converge was like this unobtainable, like, you know, as a 17-year-old, I'm like, I'm never gonna be as good as fucking Converge. Like, so I don't even think I tried to let that influence me in terms of like what we sounded like. But that's me speaking personally at the time.
But
I think like, oh, go ahead, Brandon.
No, I was gonna say I would pretty much agree with Scott. Like all the influences that he's kind of put down are pretty much go the same for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I was listening to bands like Avenged Sevenfold and stuff like that. So I was just like kind of at this like entry level of heavy music, and I was like, oh, but what we're doing is like nothing like that. So I would hear bands like Neurosis and ISIS get thrown around, and so I would listen to that. I wasn't like really a fan of that kind of music yet, but I would listen to it and I'd be like, okay, so it's heavy music, but like the songs are just way longer, and you play, you know, like the riffs just go on forever. And so I was like, it was like this kind of misunderstanding of what the music was, but for whatever it was on the drums, it was able to make it work. And I should say my tastes have improved since then, but that's just where I was coming from at 17.
Yeah, cool. Would you obviously like Scott said there, like you're all in a very different place now. But when you listen to it now, is there anything that you go back and go, oh, I wish I could change that or make this, you know, better or different? Do you ever have that sort of thought process when you listen to it?
No, I don't.
No.
And actually, out of all of our albums, that's the one I feel is probably most not susceptible to that train of thought from me as like someone who was involved in the creation process.
Yeah.
I can go back to especially No Matter Where It Ends and be like, okay, I've changed so much about this album. But I think, like Jackson mentioned earlier, I think whether that's being naive and young or just purposefully being youthful and transposing it to that album, it has a charm that I think still holds up to this day.
I think it's hard for me to hear all those double kick parts and not feel like I overdid it. So like, it's like I wouldn't change it, but I would. You know, if I could go back in time, I would definitely play it differently. But I know that part of the charm is that naivety and that it just worked the way it did. So yeah, I don't know. I feel both ways about it. I would change everything and nothing.
You right, Brandon? Or?
No, I don't really have anything I would change about it. I mean, maybe tweak the cymbal level a little bit because they are pretty buried in the mix. But overall, I don't have anything that I could pinpoint to say change this, or I wish I did this, or I wish Scott did this, or anything like that.
Well, actually,
in all honesty, I wish we could take things from that album and put them into our newer things. Like the bass tone on that album is still like among my favorites.
I was just about to say that. So one of the things that blows my mind about the album most is the album's production. So to me, it's like it's one of, I'm not joking, it's one of the most fucking heaviest albums I've ever heard, right? So
thank you.
Where did you have like any sort of knowledge with production or anything back then? Did you have like a preconceived map out with how you wanted it to sound, or was it all sort of incidental?
I think it was incidental. I think the first time we heard it, we were like, what the fuck?
Well, I remember hearing the rough mixes and thinking, this sucks. Like, this sounds horrible.
Yeah,
and
for
then
sure.
I had gone on vacation and come back, and it had been like fully mixed and mastered, and I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah. I remember when we got because the final day of mixing and mastering was just me and Jeff at the studio. And when I was driving back with the CD at the time, he had to stop off somewhere. He had driven and he had to stop off somewhere for like, I believe, a doctor's appointment. So I was stuck in the car and his CD player wasn't working. So all I had was a laptop. And even then, through those shitty laptop speakers, I was like, fuck, I cannot wait to get home because this sounds fucking nuts. And then I got home and threw it on the stereo and I was like, me? Like this 17-year-old with my friends? We did this? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah, it was definitely incidental, especially because we didn't even give very much thought to where we recorded. Like, Love Juice was just kind of the place you went if you wanted to have a good sounding recording from where we were from. Like, we didn't do very much research. We didn't know of many other studios. And so we were just like, okay, I guess this is where you go to record. And then this guy, Dave there, who we later built a relationship with, he's just like a wizard with like a very specific sound. And I think he was just kind of like tuning it and like really making it his own when we recorded this album. So there was like, we knew we wanted it to sound a certain way. All the drums from that album or from that studio all kind of sound the same. But yeah, all the things that we really love about it just kind of turned out without even having to put that much effort into it.
Yeah. Did you stick with the same studio going forward, or did you mix it up?
No matter where it ends, we did.
Yeah, and then Buster was recorded there, Admiral's album, and then No Matter Where It Ends, we recorded there. It Begins Again, we recorded there. Scott and I's hardcore band Benoit recorded there. So yeah, we developed a relationship with that studio and went back several times.
And now even Rosdauer recorded there.
Yeah. We went back specifically because we'd had such good experiences and success there with sound.
Right, cool. Each one of your albums has a very distinct sound and feel to it. Is that primarily down to the changing vocalists, or it's sort of an artistic exploration?
Ooh,
probably both.
Yeah. Well, obviously, changing vocalists that definitely has a really big shift in sound. But do you always sort of want to really sort of push and challenge yourself into doing completely different things?
Well, I remember when we were specifically doing No Matter Where It Ends, Scott approaching it in the mindset of, we don't want to do I Am God songs too. We want to try to do something new and fresh versus, just retreading the same waters and the same song structure or ideas that we'd already done.
Yeah.
I think, I know, personally speaking for me, I know No Matter Where It Ends, that's what I told Brandon. It almost feels like lip service in retrospect, because when I listen to that album, I feel like it's just not my favorite. But I know for, say, like I'm Going to Kill Myself, we made a concerted effort. Like, the theme of the album was like, let's try to make the best boring album we can, or like the most like, right, like the best worst album. And that's like where, like, songs like Metallica came from. It was like, all right, I mean, the song is one note for 30 minutes. I think like the vocalists change again, because with I'm Going to Kill Myself, Brandon took over vocals for that album, and that was also a concerted effort to sort of remove ourselves from like the lower guttural, like almost like Cookie Monster, if you will, vocals, and sort of go, like, at the time I was like super into like Envy, and even like things like more like the scrammy nature, and then even bands like the Blood Brothers, and like I just wanted like something like screechy that like would sounds like it's like trying to piss you off.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I think what we're writing and recording right now, or what we're finishing up right now, is even further into that territory of Sky. I remember you comparing like Envy and Godflesh and trying to like compare both of those essences together. And I think what we're doing right now pulls that off even better, but
yeah,
we're not done with it yet. So
I think like with I'm Gonna Kill Myself, we were limited. Like, I do like that album, but we were limited by the thought process of like, let's do like a shitty, boring album, which is why it's sort of like monotone and repetitive. And I think if we had taken off those shackles, you would have gotten something a little bit closer to what we're about to be putting out. But that's not to say I don't like. I do like the experiment that we went with for I'm Gonna Kill Myself.
Mm. So you probably wouldn't have got to where you are now if it hadn't have been for Let's Kill Myself.
Yeah, I think so. I think we needed to like really see how far we could take it and it still feel like music at all to get to what we're writing now and what we're doing. Yeah. Because that was such like an arduous process to just be like, you know, the restraints are so high and we're doing one note for 30 minutes and like how much can we do with that? And like Scott said, some of it does feel limiting, which is part of the point, but it feels limiting, you know?
Yeah, you gotta remember it was like at a certain point, like being in the throes of recording the album, it was easy to like catch yourself and be like, whoa, shit, is this boring? Cause like I'm bored.
Brilliant. Right, so like you've already said, Brandon, you're the vocalist now.
Yeah.
When obviously Jeff and Trey were vocalists as well, do you feel that you all bring different message and different themes to the table, or do you all have like a like-minded sort of headset when you're writing lyrics and stuff?
I think we all kind of have our own way of approaching it. I would say that my thought process probably like lines up more with Jeff, and a bit of like the despair aspect. Some of the lyrics are, especially on this new album, were pretty simple and straightforward, which is something that I kind of picked up from him. Not trying to sound smarter than the audience that's listening to it. Definitely don't want to do that. So it's a lot of emotion put into it. Jeff I love his vocals and his vocal style, and just a lot of things he had to say on I Am God's songs really spoke to me. Still do to a degree, in terms of just that like loneliness or hopelessness. And I really wanted to try to recapture that theme a lot with the new album, especially.
Cool. I feel that with Black Sheep Wall's music, there's like an extreme an emotional transparency at the front of the music. The nihilism feels like it's very much real. I think that's a lot of the reason why it appeals to me. Obviously, it's great for a listener, but do you feel that having that kind of mindset as an artist that's creating the music, it sort of has like a detrimental effect on the band?
I go back and forth on this a lot. I think for a long time I was of the mindset like I would have answered this question as simply no, as like, no, the band is a place where I simply let out a certain piece of myself, and I do that so that in the rest of my life I can be a fully functioning normal person. And so like the band does not reflect my personality to any degree. Now that I'm a little bit older and have given it a lot of thought, I think there might have been times that it started to influence me, not necessarily in a negative way, but in a way that was maybe a little more cerebral for my own good, especially in recording our last album, I'm Gonna Kill Myself, where it was just like, we were so into this restraint, and I, especially working on Metallica, like went to places that I hadn't gone before in really working on one song. So I do think it's for the greater good. I would disagree with anybody who says any of our lives have been worse off for choosing to make the kind of music that we make. But I do think there is, I'm becoming more open-minded to the way that too much of something can be a bad thing. especially in the kind of things that we're making. So as I get older, it's something I'm more open-minded and just careful about, I suppose. What do you guys think?
I think the emotional transparency was definitely like, that was something we put on the table right from the beginning, where we were almost like too transparent, I think, because like at the time, it was like MySpace was the big platform, right, for social media. And even like I would engage in conversations with like our fans and just post like updates on the band's page that like had nothing to do with the band, but they were just there so we could connect essentially. And a lot of that was the connection between, you know, me or the band and whoever I was connecting with, was that nihilism, like sort of despair thing. And yeah, I don't know, a negative, I can't put up my thumb on that and say it was negative, but it was definitely unique to us at the time.
I don't know. Speaking for myself, if I think it had a negative effect on the band, for me personally, no. Only because I feel like a lot of the stuff we put out there is not put out there to be edgy or, hey, I have to go to this place or write something that's going to make me feel uncomfortable, as much as it is just channeling something I'm already feeling.
Right. Cool.
Good way to put it.
Yeah. So obviously you guys have been quiet for a few years. It's obviously when you're on the outside, obviously, you know, you don't always know the truth. So is there, like, to me, you guys sort of make an album and then you just sort of leave it and that's it? It does writing the Black Sheep Wall is like a strenuous task where it's the point where it basically takes everything out of you and then you have to go on and move on to do other projects. So I know you guys do a lot of other side projects. So is that why you do other projects?
Huh. I've never thought about it. I think more so with us in terms of like taking breaks or disappearing for a bit, it's more so than actually creating, like putting ourselves in the space to create the music isn't what makes us like separate. I think it's just where we were in our lives at different points in time, where like maybe a singer didn't get along with a drummer, or we all had a big blow up. We all have to go away for a little bit. Because at the core of this, like especially now, me, Jackson, and Brandon have known each other a long time. Our other guitar player, Andrew, has been friends with Jackson forever. More important than the band is our friendship, I think. And especially after I'm going to kill myself, without getting into too much detail, there was some interpersonal issues where it was more important to just be friends first, and then we can come back to this album whenever. And I think things like that have stunted our sort of our output and our ability to like stay for long term after we release music, more so than actually creating the music itself. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I know you guys have briefly mentioned it already. You posted pictures of you guys in the studio. There's a new album in the works, yeah?
Yeah.
What can we as fans expect from it?
Different?
It's different, yeah. It's definitely different. It's cool because it's like, no matter where it ends, I felt like there was the pressure to follow up I Am God songs, which, we were a lot younger too. So I felt that. And I think we didn't live up to the expectations. Like we mentioned earlier, I'm Going to Kill Myself was shackled by whatever the mindset was to make sure the album was written. And so this is kind of our first chance since I don't know, ever, to like actually do like a fully fleshed, dynamic, full album. And I think it's just that. I think it's dynamic. It's very emotional. I think it sounds more mature. I know at the time when we recorded it, my chops as a guitar player were probably better than they'd ever been. So while it still sounds like Black Sheep Wall, there's, I think, actual elements that, whether it's more melodic or more out of left field, I think there's a lot of that in there now. like we have a song that's like a minute and or about 2 minutes, just right around 2 minutes, right? Which is like, it's fast. So a little different for us.
Yeah, it's definitely the most musical album I think we've ever done before. It's like without any preconceived idea in mind of it needs to sound this way. It's maybe the most organic, natural feeling album, and like certain songs you might hear for the first time and say like, wait, that's Black Sheep Wall, but I think as the record as a whole definitely still sounds like a Black Sheep Wall album.
What about your vocal approach, Brandon? Are you going for it a bit differently, or?
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely more range. It's not just the high pitch kind of shrieks. It's got a bit of that to it, but I really tried to both mature and expand what I'm doing on the album. I think some people will be pleasantly surprised, for sure.
Yeah, I know we were. Brandon let loose for the first time in the studio, because we're finishing the album has been a process. The music was recorded in like 2016, right? Wow. And we're finishing it here now in 2020. So to sit on it for so long and get into the studio, and just, I think when Brandon first started recording his tracks, we all kind of like double took and were like, holy shit, dude, this is fucking money.
Yeah, I think if we were to have finished this up in 2016, you would have gotten vocals that sounded much more in line with I'm Gonna Kill Myself, just more of them. Whereas this, I think you're going to get something a bit different.
Oh, brilliant. Cool. Are you able to give us a rough idea when it's coming out?
Hopefully soon. We don't actually have a date yet. There is definitely some wheels moving to get that out there. But I mean, it's hard to say that we've been sitting on the music for almost 4 years. So I want to say hopefully sometime before the end of the year, or at the very latest, the beginning of next year.
Brilliant. Yeah, cool. So extending a new album, do you have any other plans for Black Sheep Wall? I know the way things are in America at the minute with the coronavirus, it's obviously crippling live music, so your options are limited, but is there anything else that fans can look forward to in the way of activities?
We definitely have a few things in the works and things that we've talked about doing on many different fronts. So I'd say we do have stuff in the work, but the specifics of them I can't really get into.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I think like we've always approached the band is like, I don't want to say spurts, but you know, one moment at a time. And we're in a moment right now where we're all invested again, and we all care about it, and we all love it again. You know, so
yeah,
we're gonna ride that out until if we ever hit another roadblock.
Brilliant, cool. Well, that's it, guys.
All right, Simon, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks so much, man.
No, you guys are really nice. Cheers for your time. It's been great.
No problem, man.